did say that he signed to show conspiratorial thinking, and like those things are something that I do think he believes, and I do think he makes the case for it in his videos. And then the Jewish conspiracy part would be the hyperbole, would be the stretching it, the making it so and like making it, exaggerating it so that it makes no sense anymore. That would be.
But it does make sense though, and that's the thing, is that when you accuse somebody of being in, like, believing in Nazi beliefs, and then later also say that they believe in Jewish cabal conspiracy theories and that they're a conspiracy theorist, all of these things link up, and it's all things that he repeated over and over and over and over and over. And like, we would just end up having to believe that even though these are all linked to one another as one idea of her being a Nazi conspiracy theorist who believes in Jewish cabals, instead we would have to believe that only one of those things is actually hyperbolic and the rest of them are serious statements. And or we would have to believe that all of them are hyperbolic in and of themselves. And that's I think that's a stretch. I think that's a tall order to believe. Yo, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I know that name. I know that name. You're the one who timestamped my entire video. We can go over it. You wanna go over it? I can go over the freaking timestamps. I'm ready. I gotta stretch first, but we can. Sure? All right. There you go. Hey,
Yeah.
can you hear me? There we go. Can you hear me?
Wait, I'm here. Double talk. Okay, now I can hear you.
Nice. How do you pronounce your name?
I prefer not pronounce it if it's okay.
Okay.
But you can call me Rilo. That would be fine.
Rilo? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll play the timestamp, and then we'll look at what you wrote about it after. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Prominent as well. The left turns around and blames the fact that right-wingers are crazy on Shoe on Head. Obviously, they're not blaming Shoe on Head for right-wingers being crazy, but they are acting like she should know better than to talk about
right. So that's where it's supposed to end. Because so basically, you said in one sentence that the left is blaming Shu for a few people that went crazy, basically, and then you immediately say, obviously, they're not blaming Shu for right-wingers being crazy.
Mhm.
And for me, from what I understood at the beginning, is that on the second part, you like acknowledged that that wasn't their criticism, but on the first part you somehow levied that criticism of the behavior anyway, and you responded to me by saying that that was actually the other way around, like it was a sarcastic.
Yeah, it was meant to be. Yeah, so the point was to say the left is blaming Shoe on Head for right-wingers being crazy, and then right after saying, well, obviously they're not blaming her for right-wingers being crazy. That would sound nuts, right? That nobody would actually do that. But the second, like, after you go through and watch, you'll see something like Xanderhal showing, look at this article that right-wingers wrote, and now they're conflating, pedophilia with was it polyamory, and they have Shoe on Head's tweet right there. Wow, Shoe on Head did this. And so they actually like almost literally say numerous times, both Demon Mama and Xanderhal both literally like say at points like this is Shuanhead's fault that right wingers are doing this. So they do 100% later actually blame her for right wingers being crazy. And so it was supposed to be like it, yeah, it's supposed to look like I'm correcting myself, but then as we go through the video, you see that that's not the case, that they actually do blame her for right wingers being crazy.
So I can say something about that. Like, I think if you, it's not that important for my criticism, but like, if you are sarcastic to the point where
It's not meant to be known in the moment that it's sarcasm. It's supposed to be like a harken back later. So I make it a bigger deal in that moment to where you do think, well, why would he correct himself? Why wouldn't he just delete this out? And then later you get that answer to your own question.
all right. So the second thing I want to say about what you just said is that um, the criticism that Shu did not take responsibility for the what's the word? The outcomes of her actions is established by showing how people used her tweet to forward the right wing propaganda. People do it over and over again in multiple news sites, in multiple articles, all over Twitter. And for some reason, you seem to disregard that as part of the evidence of her misconduct.
I don't disregard it as evidence of her conduct. I say over and over throughout the video, I think she should have pushed back against the against the conspiracy theorists more. I think that she downplayed her part in this. I think that she should take responsibility for this stuff. I said all of that throughout my video. It's more so that those conspiracy theorists already believe those things. She didn't get them to believe that. Those people were already crazy. They already believed that like polyamory and pedophilia were analogous before Shu said anything. She didn't convince them to think that polyamory and pedophilia were analogous, but we're still blaming her for their insanity.
I would agree on the initial response to tweets, but I think there is a key misunderstanding going on, which is that in her video, she did a few times conflate between the Balenciaga thing and pedophilia very explicitly. Like, I can give you timestamps for a video if you want about points where she actually used the word pedophilia to refer to the Balenciaga thing.
Well, I also called it pedophilic and talked about pedophilia in my video as well.
And don't you think that's a bit irresponsible language?
Well, no, because we're not calling anybody in there a pedophile. We're saying that this is pedophilic behavior. That's why people are upset about it, is because it is pedophilic behavior. It is like things that would like push our social norms to a point where red flags for grooming would be normalized, and grooming is normally like we're talking about pedophilic behavior. So that is like the entire problem, is that it is overall pedophilic behavior.
I see. Okay, so this is some point which I heavily disagree with. I don't think the initial response from people on Twitter and also news articles that came about after the fact quoting Shu, I don't think their position that they presented was that nuanced position that you just presented.
I agree.
Most of the people, which were shown through the videos of Zan, Demon Mama, not Vaush, but he referred to it vaguely. They made a connection between that Balenciaga photo shoots, and grooming, and LGBTQ community, and Shu failed to address that, and even, let's say, how do you say it? Countered to the
Yeah, kowtowed. Yeah.
kowtowed to that position in a follow-up video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I was critical of her in my video for those sorts of things as well. I also felt like she did a poor job. Like I say in my video that if Xanderhal and Demon Mama and all of these people, like they come back and say that that was their real criticism the entire time. And I say throughout my video, if that's all they had said and they had left it at that, I would have no issues with them. We would all agree and it would all be good. But instead, they start calling her a conspiracy theorist. They start accusing her of like being a QAnoner. They start saying that she's pushing Jewish cabal conspiracy theories. They say like Demon Mama starts saying that she's supporting child trafficking or sex trafficking stuff. Like they took everything way outside of the realms of what actually happened, and that was my issue. The real, like, yes, the part where we say, hey, like, you were irresponsible, you let people take what you said and run off with a different narrative, that was irresponsible, like, you need to push back against this stuff, you need to be clear with what your message is. I repeated all of that throughout my video numerous times to make it clear that I wasn't defending her against those claims.
I think the way I received it wasn't exactly the way you're phrasing it now, because it seemed like they had multiple lines of criticism. They did mention very explicitly in the videos about Chu's video that they criticize her for mishandling this, and on the video for furthering these conspiracies in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
They also, Zan and Demonon specifically, had a criticism about the initial response, but I would argue that those are two different lines of criticism, and you took the position of disregarding the former and made the latter more salient, as if that was all they were saying.
Well, I say in my video that they would tell you that that's their main criticism. And I say, if that was their entire criticism, I would agree with them and I wouldn't be making this video right now. But that's obviously not all they said. And then I show them calling her a Nazi. I show them calling her a conspiracy theorist. I show them saying all of this other stuff. And I show example after example after example after example. So it's not like they just say it in passing and then move on. They make their entire videos about her being a conspiracy theorist and about her pushing conspiracy theories and about her like believing in Jewish cabals and being a QAnoner and all of this other stuff. Her supporting child trafficking, like all of this stuff is just so that those were the parts that I had an issue with. And so, yeah, I felt like in my video, I made it very clear that I was not happy with the way that she handled the situation. I felt like she downplayed it. I felt like, she didn't address it very well. I felt like she should have pushed back more. Like, I say all of those things throughout my video. And I even say over and over, it's not what you did, it's what you didn't do. That's the problem. It's not that you put out the tweet. That's the problem. It's that after you put out the tweet, you didn't do damage control on everything that happened afterwards. Like, I tried to make it very clear that I was upset with her for not pushing back enough, but also that doesn't give them free reign to just start making up lies about her, about all the conspiracy theorist stuff.
I will reiterate my point because I think I wasn't clear enough, maybe.
I thought you were saying that I wasn't clear in saying that she didn't, to say that I thought that she should have pushed back more and that I overlooked their initial criticism of her on the outcomes. And instead I focused on other things. And I'm trying to say that if they had focused on that initial point, I would have too, but they didn't. They focused on the other things. So I focused on the other things. Is that incorrect?
I would argue that in a 2 hours video that each of them made, first on her initial tweet and then another one on her video. First, I will argue that each of those videos should be parsed differently because they contain different context. At one, they're responding to an initial tweet and they're downplaying the Balenciaga thing. And on the second video, on Shu's response, they're going after her response about the things she outright says in the video. So
do you think the video she pushed the conspiracy theory in the video?
Not in the way that you seem to not not as explicitly as you seem to look for it. If I'm vaguely passing my point to you, what I'm trying to say is that she did not outright say, I think the Balenciaga thing points to pedophilia, but she did pretend multiple times that what happened is that she was going after pedophilia and the left criticized her for that. That was explicitly addressed in the follow-up videos after Shu's video. And I think you miss important context when you mix the 2 points in the timeline between the criticism of the initial response and the criticism of her video. Because in a video, I can point you to specific timelines when she does this thing. This like weird way of framing the whole situation. And by the way, that was also part of Vaush's criticism. He also addresses this in his video.
And I address Vaush addressing that. And when he says, well, you can't call this pedophilic, I say, no, you're wrong. It is pedophilic. Like he says it's sus, not pedophilic. And I said, Vaush, what do you think we're sus of? What do you think it is that we're suspicious of? It's the pedophilic nature of these pictures. It is pedophilia that we are suspicious of. So I know that Vaush addresses that, but I disagree with him. And I'm wondering, when you say that she's talking about pedophilia, obviously I'm also talking about pedophilia. I don't think that I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't think she was spreading a conspiracy theory either. I agree with her on the pedophilic nature of the pictures.
I think that by doing that, you're doing the same thing that you did, not to the same degree, of course, but like pretending that there is some essence to the criticism beyond the pictures being weird. Like you build upon the pictures being weird this narrative that somehow it normalizes pedophilic behavior or suggestiveness of pedophilia or something like that. And I think that's part of the right wing's hysteria surrounding this. And while again, not to the same extent, you.
Well, the difference is though. I'm sorry, but I understand what you're saying, but I feel like the difference is for Shoe on Head and I, when Balenciaga comes out with an apology and takes everything down, we say, oh, okay, cool, awesome. They took it down, they apologized, dope, and then that's the end of it for us. Whereas for conspiracy theorists, they're like, oh, well, it's actually the Democrats who are pushing this, and they're trying to, they're trying to groom our kids, and they're, and Hollywood is working with them, and there's the demonic stuff, and like they add in all of these other parts of it that we don't believe in, we have nothing to do with. And Shu specifically says in her video, I don't believe that there's some like Pizzagate conspiracy theory going on, and I said that in my video as well. But all of the conspiracy theorists, they do link it to like a Pizzagate type of conspiracy theory where there's like a demonic thing happening.
Again, I don't disagree with this understanding of the situation, besides the fact that part of the criticism that was levied about her did address the people that went crazy after her tweet, and they were making more than just saying that Balenciaga is pedophilia, right? They were taking to other levels.
And I agree with that criticism of her.
But when Shu does her video, response video, she spends about 20 seconds making that point of hers. And then right after, going back to frame the entire thing as if she is being criticized by the left for pointing out pedophilia.
Okay.
Which is the problematic part.
So Demon Mama and Xanderhal, they both say they don't think there's anything wrong with the document. They don't think there's anything wrong with the bear. They don't think there's anything sus. They don't think there's anything weird. Okay? So if they think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of this at all, would you not agree that they are going after her, that they are upset with her for the initial post? Both of them called the initial post a conspiracy theory. They said that she was pushing a conspiracy theory with that initial post instead of saying, hey, other people are using this to push a conspiracy theory and you're not pushing back enough. They said, you are making up stuff and linking things together that are not related, and you are pushing a conspiracy theory while acting like there's patterns where there aren't patterns. And she never said any of those things. So if they are mad with her for the initial post, then I would say, yes, she is correct. They are mad at her for pointing it out in the first place.
Pointing out what?
Pointing out that the pictures were sus, that the pictures were weird. They don't think that the pictures were sus. They don't think that they were weird.
That's a sleight of hand that Shu does. Because a moment ago, we talked about how she continued to double down over this road and pretend as if none of her audience took it this way. She also tweeted in the initial response about how a couple of people from the left specifically and said that it's normal stuff. People are going after her for pedo shit. So even in the initial response, and when I say the initial response, I mean before the response video of hers, even there she made that connection. Even if she didn't outright say the people who are after me are pedophiles, she did make the semantic connection for her audience, and they took it.
Yeah, and I talked about this in my video, that like right-wingers do seem to conflate this stuff and dumb it down a bit too much. Normally for me, if I see somebody saying these people are defending pedo stuff, I would think, okay, well, they're defending pedo stuff, not that they are pedophiles in and of themselves. Like Demon Mama, I had to make this clarification in my video. Demon Mama obviously is defending pedo stuff, but she's not a pedophile. She's not a groomer. She doesn't want grooming. She doesn't believe in any of that stuff. She just has like a twisted way of looking at these things that is uninformed. But I don't think that like, I don't think Shu's intention was to say they are pedophiles. She believes the left is trying to normalize pedophilia, not that they are pedophiles, right?
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because, first of all, in the initial response, she made a connection. And in her follow-up video, she does this again, more explicitly, a few times. So I guess it's left for the individual to guess. And I think that when you take the position that you possess and generalize it in a way where you think that that's how most people got it, while it may be true, the criticism is against um, the wave of right-wing propaganda that took place,
Mm-hmm.
not against how things would be understood by a normie. You understand? It's more like...
But they were upset with her for pointing it out in the first place. They were upset with that. It wasn't just the outcome. They were upset for her for pointing it out at all.
Again, this is part of the criticism. They made 2-hour videos where they made multiple points. And in the same way, if I would come to your video and took, I don't know, a few clips and pretended that's all what you said, you will take issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
You made multiple points during the video, which is what I tried to do in my comment, is to pass through your claims and to address them point by point instead of levying general criticisms.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do have points to make about how they act, but you over-exaggerated and painted their entire criticism in one broad brush, which is why I take issue with your video, basically.
So I guess that's the part that I'm not understanding then, because you're making it. I feel like you're making it sound like I'm not recognizing parts of their criticisms that each time you say, this is the part that you didn't recognize, I point out a bunch of places in the video where I recognize that part of their argument, but then I still go on to criticize them for the other parts. So I'm not understanding what part you feel like I'm not recognizing of, like, what part of their arguments that I'm not addressing.
Again, like I pointed out with the shoe video, you can indeed address it for some time in your video, but the issue I take with it is the amount of emphasis you put on everything, and also the picture that you paint during the video, that was somehow the only criticism, and also that there is no differentiation between the criticism against her initial response and the criticism against her video.
But everything that you're pointing out, I addressed all of those things in the video. The things, like, each time I ask you what it is that I'm not addressing, whatever you point out is stuff that did get addressed in the video. So that's the part I'm asking about, is what part wasn't addressed in the video. Because the parts about her not responding to all of the conspiracy theorists, the parts about, like, the far right taking off with the narrative, the parts about, like, not downplaying it too much. Like, I said that these were their criticisms, and I did address that numerous times in the video to say that that's what they would say is their real criticism. But most of their videos weren't about that. Most of their videos were about the conspiracy theorism.
I disagree with that notion. I think that Demon Mama, even in her response to the initial tweet, took most of the time to go over the fallout and the right-wing reaction to the tweet. Like, is literally, I think, maybe an hour in that video of her going over tweets in an attempt to establish that there was a right-wing hysteria following it. That there was something that needs to be addressed by Shu.
Correct. And again, I acknowledge that they did this in my video, and I acknowledge that part. But when I already agree with them on that part, I don't understand why I would continue showing them saying stuff that I've already addressed. I've already agreed with them on it. I already, like, acknowledged that part is true. It's this entire other part of your videos that I disagree with. And so that's what I made my video about, is acknowledging the parts that they were correct on, acknowledging the parts that I agree with them on, and then saying, but they did all of this other messed up stuff too.
So, to me, and I may be biased about this, that's not how it came out. As someone who watched the video multiple times, it seemed more like, yeah, and I hate to do this comparison because I don't think you do it to the same extent, but it's just like Shu paying the lip service, like saying the thing to be formal and to be like formal and grounded in a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
But then going on to saying stuff like, as if them saying Shu's response was irresponsible is not their real criticism. I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to say that's not their real criticism? If I just, I didn't demonstrate, but I think I made a case that even the initial response, for example, Demon Mama, from Demon Mama, she did spend a lot of time on that criticism. From what I'm feeling, and I am very aware that it's a notion of mine, is that you somehow disregard that by saying things like, that's not their real criticism.
Okay. So if they don't agree that there was anything wrong with the pictures, right?
Yeah.
They are going to start off at a completely different position than I would. They're going to start off where Shu has already done something wrong just by making the tweet in the first place, right? That's it. Like, she's already done something wrong just by making the tweet. And then she allows everybody to take her tweet that is bad, and they carry on. They believe that tweet is already pushing a conspiracy theory. It's already lying about Balenciaga. It's already lying about the bear. It's already lying about the document. It's already lying about everything. That tweet is already bad. And then they go on to talk about all of the bad outcomes from that tweet and the conspiracies that she's pushing and blah, 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 right? Whereas I start with a position that there's nothing wrong with the tweet by itself. I agree with the tweet. The tweet is fine. It's the outcome of the tweet afterwards that I have a problem with. You're framing it like they are okay with the tweet. It's just the outcome afterwards that they have a problem with. And that's where I think we disagree. They are not okay with the tweet. They make it clear. They don't think there's anything wrong with the bear. They don't think there's anything wrong with the document. And they think that Shu is purposefully pushing a moral panic just by talking about the bear and the document in the first place. Whereas I don't. I think that talking about the bear and the document is perfectly fine.
How do I phrase this? I don't disagree with the criticism on their framing of the photo shoots and the documents. I haven't made that criticism myself. My issue is with the video, and again, this could be a bias of mine, it seems like you put much more emphasis on that shortcoming and make it seem like that was all of the response, and you do it by conflating their initial response and the response to her video, when everything they accused her of manifests itself again.
Okay, let me frame it like this then. Okay. When they start off with the belief that the tweet is already wrong, my perspective is that when they believe the tweet is already wrong, they are not just upset about the pushback or about her not pushing back enough, right? Do you agree with that part? There's more after this, but do you agree with that much at least? If they already believe that the tweet is wrong, they wouldn't be upset that somebody took a different narrative with it. They're just upset that people are believing in the tweet in and of itself, correct?
I'm not sure. I think they did make the case during their videos that it's more than like the substance of the tweet. It's the fact that Shu, with her platform, with her right-wing portion of the audience that she is aware of, does this over and over again. Demon Mama specifically did an entire section this problem with their behavior by pointing out that every Pride Month she does a new how do you call it, kink,
Kink at Pride
she
stuff,
brings
yeah.
out which is part of a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it's not the
understand how
first time
that.
she does it, and she should be aware of her audience taking to their interpretation by this point.
So okay, so I understand when Demon Mama phrases it that way, it sounds really bad, but if you think about it, if somebody has a problem with kink at Pride, it they're going if every year there's more kink at Pride, that's when they're going to talk about it, is when it's news. So right after a Pride event happens, if there is kink there around children again, that's when they're going to point it out. New photos, new information has come out. Now they're going to post it. They're not going to wait for the month to be over and then be like, hey guys, by the way, last month this thing happened. No, they're going to say, hey, look what just happened today. Look at these photos that just came out. See, this is happening again. We still have a problem with this, and they're still doing it. Like, it makes sense that it would happen during Pride months when that's when the kink is happening at Pride, right?
Well, this is true. Still comes with the baggage of the overemphasizing it, specifically on Pride Month, and portraying it as a Pride parade problem.
I mean, I went over a lot of her tweets, so I don't have a problem with Pride parades, but they're all of the ones that I could see about the kink stuff. I agreed with almost every single one of them, barring one. There was one that I felt like was incorrect, and when I went back to her Twitter to see where it was, I found out that it had been deleted. So the one that I felt like she was wrong about, that she was off about, she was stretching a bit too much. That one had been deleted. Apparently, then I went and Googled it. Apparently, she deleted it like the next day because she had a lot of blowback. She found out that it was that, her context was incorrect on it, and she took it down immediately. But all the other ones, I felt like were fair criticisms of people like being overly sexual and nude in public around children. And I felt like they were things that I probably would have tweeted out about as well if I had seen them or known about them.
And if Shu was a 2K subscriber Andy, I wouldn't take an issue with it. But she has a platform, and therefore she has a responsibility for how she passes an information and how she portrays that information to her audience.
So I think, like, from my perspective, I say this in the video, I'm not like a huge Shu on Head fan, so I don't watch like a whole lot of her stuff. But in a lot of the stuff that I have seen, she does talk about like LGBTQ stuff. She talks about trans people. She sticks up for them a lot. She does have like a bi flag and a trans flag, or a LGBTQ flag behind her during a lot of her streams. I feel like she's done a lot of the legwork ahead of time to say, like, if I'm putting out information that says that there's kink at Pride, I don't have a problem with the LGBTQ. I have a problem with the kink that is at Pride. Not Pride and not the LGBTQ, because obviously she's pro LGBTQ. So I feel like she's already done that legwork ahead of time to where most people would never take it that way, right?
But people do take it that way, and it happens. I don't want to say over and over again because I don't really follow her on Twitter, but isn't it a bit weird that she brings it up only at Pride Month?
Well, that's when it's happening.
You see, that's the framing I have a problem with. What do you mean by that's where it's happening? Does
That's
it not
when
happen at when cis people are well, cis hetero people are having their own kink parades? I don't know where.
no, we like there are those don't really exist. The only time that it happens is at pride parades, and it's and it's like a consistent problem. It's not just something that Shu points out. It's all over like American media every single Pride Month, because every single Pride Month there's, and it's only like, it's not a huge problem with Pride either. It's like two or three every year that end up having these issues. And even Vaush has said, like, I have a problem with this. I don't like it. They need to start like doing these things in private areas. Like, most everybody has an issue with this. Even like LGBTQ people, there's a number of gay and trans people in my audience right now who will tell you like they all have problems with these things as well. They agree with Shu on these things. I think it's the framing that Demon Mama puts it in that makes it sound a lot more sinister. But if you look around, it's actually just kind of the norm for like around Pride Month, where there are people who believe there's absolutely nothing wrong with having kink around children. Demon Mama is one of those people who will say, like, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. She's had debates with Vaush about this. And then there's everybody else who has issues with this. And so it becomes a big conversation every year. And we do panels on it and debates. And yeah, it happens every year.
I take issue with the way you framed this. You said normal people have an issue with this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's like taking your own position, your own understanding of the situation, and generalizing it for everyone. So the reason it's each year in the news is because right-wing propaganda machines are bringing it to the attention of the public. Not because, I don't know, I haven't seen it talked about in CNN every year, for example.
Well, I mean, I
Something
mentioned
that
Vaush, who also argues about it every year or does debates and goes on panels. Destiny as well. I mentioned other LGBTQ people. There's trans people and gay people that are my mods in my audience right now who will agree with these things and also do debates on them, and they go on panels and talk about them every year. It is just like part of the cycle where literally every year during Pride Month, more and more pictures start to come out, more and more people start to have a problem with it.
come
They
out
say,
from where?
so from Pride parades. So like the Pride parades happen during Pride Month, and then while they're happening during Pride Month, those pictures start to come out into like, the media. And it's not just like right-wing media pushing it. It's like I said, Vaush, like everybody is talking about it every year. It's the right wingers take a completely different like narrative on it, where their narrative is LGBTQ people are bad, whereas the rest of us are saying LGBTQ people are fine. It's the problem is this few small group of people who keep taking pride, or keep taking the kink stuff to Pride around kids, and we just have an issue with just that small group of people at the small group of Pride events, because most Pride events have already like made it against the rules to come in like full gimp suits and stuff like that.
You know what? I can concede this point because I feel like we moved away from talking about the video.
Well, I think it's a big part of it is to say like a lot of it's the framing that Demon Mama puts on it, where like as though Shu is doing this thing by herself, when actuality like it's everybody who's doing it, including Vaush. And that's why when Vaush reviewed the video, he had a very different take on Shu and had like way more charitability and was like reacting to her in a very different way. Like Demon Mama starts off her video talking for 20 minutes about child trafficking,
Which
child
video?
sex trafficking. Her second video, she starts off talking for 20 minutes about child sex trafficking, and that how all of these organizations have said that what Shuan Head is doing is detrimental to any organization trying to stop child sex trafficking. But in her like thing, when she reads what the organizations say anybody supporting a QAnon conspiracy theory is doing something detrimental. But Shu never did that. But Demon Mama and Xanderhal both accuse her of actually believing in QAnon conspiracy theories. And so that's why over and over throughout my video, I keep saying, where's the evidence? Where's the sources? Like, show me where she did this. Show me where she posted anything about QAnon. But they keep accusing her of doing it, but never show that. So I even said in the video, if that's true, if she did it, like my video would still be the same because they're not showing us that this happened. They're just making the accusation that it happened without showing us.
So there's a reason I asked you to specify in which of Demon Mama's video was that claim levied. Because in the response to Shu's video, Shu actually does kowtower to that conspiracy. Again, by referring to the Balenciaga thing as pedophilia. At least twice in that video. And that would be the... How do you say that? That would be the evidence that you are asking for. But it seems like I don't know, really. To me, the fact that she did kowtow to this conspiracy in a video justifies the way they treated her
but I agree
in their
that it was
response to the
pedophilic.
video.
Yeah, but I agree that the things were pedophilic, and that anybody who's defending it is defending pedophilia.
Okay, help me see that connection, because I see a few sus pictures, and I see people getting mad at you for suggesting that people who disagree with their take or criticize their take somehow are for pedophilia.
I'm not sorry. I wasn't saying that anybody who criticized her for her take were for pedophilia. I was saying that anybody who was saying that there was nothing weird about the bears and nothing sus about it at all are people who are in some sense defending pedophilia. So like we talked about it earlier, how like, and this is how most people seem to think about it, was just that like these are social norms that we have in place to protect children against grooming. Grooming is how pedophiles get away with pedophilia. So if you're saying this is okay, you can break those social norms, there's nothing wrong with that, it's fine, you are allowing the red flags that we use to protect children to be normalized so that pedophilia would happen more often.
I think that this notion is exactly the thing being criticized by Demon Mama when she brings up the document which claims that people who play into the QAnon conspiracy do more harm than good for the efforts to fighting pedophilia.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But I don't see anybody playing into the QAnon conspiracies. Like, me nor Shu are playing into the QAnon conspiracies. There definitely were a ton of people quote tweeting her and like retweeting her and using her message to play into it. Sorry. Yes, there were definitely a lot of them.
Except I think Shu did that in a follow-up video. And I think you're being overly charitable towards her. And maybe I can even agree that that's her internal uh, critique of the situation. But she also has 1.9 million followers on YouTube alone. And her audience takes this and does with it other things which she refused to take responsibility on.
Yeah, when I put out, so in my video where I actually explain that part, where I'm explaining like what's wrong with the bear in the document and like why anybody would be upset about it in the first place, I knew that when I was saying that, I was only saying that for like Demon Mama and Xanderhal's audiences. I knew that literally everybody else already understood this. I felt like it was common sense and common knowledge to understand that that's what's like wrong with the document, that's what everybody's upset about, that's what Shoeonhead's talking about. I felt like it was just plain and simple that's obviously why we think it's sus. And so even when you say it's sus, I would ask you, well, what are you sus of? And you would eventually say something about pedophilia. And so yes, she would obviously think, if people are attacking her just for talking about it in the first place, and they're saying that there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff, that yes, they are defending things that are pedophilic.
Except I disagree with this framing. When I say this picture are sus, I mean that they make me uncomfortable. They seem weird to me. I don't mean that somehow it normalizes pedophilia or
Well,
brings
what's
down
weird about it,
the
or like what makes you uncomfortable? Like what about that is weird, or like
seeing a child next to a leather harness.
yeah, what about that is weird?
Because leather harness has a sexual connotation
Uh-huh.
and it's right next to a child.
Why
So
wouldn't you want a
those
child to be around things that are sexual? You already said it, like you just saying a child around something sexual, that is pedophilic. That's what we call pedophilic, is
no, you
children
insert
being
this word
around.
into my mouth.
No, I'm not putting it into your mouth. I'm saying when somebody says pedophilic, that is what they mean. Like you already gave our definition of pedophilic. You just gave it right there. I'm not putting it in your mouth. I'm saying you are giving the definition.
So pedophilia is whenever a child's next to something sexual.
Not pedophilia, pedophilic. That is something that is pedophilic.
What is something that is pedophilic? How would you define that? And how would you differentiate it from like people seeing half naked people on the beach or something?
Pedophilic would be something that is relating to pedophilia. And when we talk about pedophilia, we are talking about sexualizing kids or sexual things being around kids, like from an adult perspective. So, like, if somebody's naked on the beach and the purpose is not for children to see them and it's like an accident, that would be one thing. But if you run up to a child and flash them on the beach, like so that the child sees your private parts, that would be pedophilic. It's
Um,
illegal here for people to be naked on the beach or like at all unless you're in a nudist colony. But I know in like European countries that's not the case.
I explicitly try to frame it in a more subtle manner. Um, how do you differentiate between children being next to sexual things and children just being on the beach next to people in, I don't know, bikini? What's
Um,
the difference there?
so I explained this in another debate. So like say somebody took the picture of the little girl holding the bondage bear and it was just for like their parents and they put the picture in their wallet and they just like showed it to their friends at parties and stuff like that because they thought it would be like funny and edgy. I like it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like it's still a little weird, but it's not that big of a deal. But with with the Balenciaga thing, this is them, like, this is a major corporation putting it into major ads that are seen by millions of people all over the place. That's why I mentioned earlier, like, they're normalizing the red flags that we would normally use as signs of grooming. So, like, a girl being at the beach in a bikini, that's not, that girl is not sexualizing a kid in any way. They, but the pictures from in the Balenciaga thing, they are like purposefully, putting a kid there with a bunch of alcoholic drinks there to like make it more adult like seeming, and then also a kid holding a bear in bondage gear. So um and I already feel like you're like 10 steps ahead of Demon Mama, because you already like agree that that's bondage gear. She doesn't even agree with that much, right? You already feel weird about the pictures. She doesn't even agree with that much. Same with Xanderhal, same with Denims. All of them didn't even think it was weird. But you and Vaush, you guys do think it's weird. So you guys are already like a mile ahead of her. Then during Shoe on Head's video, where she's accusing people of saying, of like normalizing pedophilic things, and Vaush keeps saying nobody's doing this. It's literally his friends doing it. It's literally Demon Mama and Xanderhal who are doing it. They're saying there's nothing wrong with this. This is normal.
I I don't want to bring it. I mean, I don't want to frame it this way because I agree that they did a bad job in the framing. But Demon Mama also explicitly mentions in a video that she thinks those pictures are strange. She uses the word. I think I don't remember the exact word, but it's something akin to strange. So one of my criticisms on your video, for example, is that you extend charitability towards Shu, and in this conversation also towards yourself, which you refuse to extend to them, because if you take people at their words, like you took how Shu framed her view in the video, then you should also accept that they explicitly said that the pictures are weird.
I didn't see that. I know that she explicitly said there's nothing wrong with them. Numerous times. She also said that the artist did nothing wrong, and that like nobody should be attacking the artist. She said Balenciaga did nothing wrong. She said there's nothing weird about these. There's nothing sus about it. Like, she says all of these things numerous times throughout her video, but I never heard her say that. And I do feel like I was very charitable to them, because a lot of the parts that I agreed with them on, I pointed all of those parts out. And I even go as far as to say lots of times they confuse, like, normalizing children like being less traumatized by nudity is what they're after, because they want to help children. So when Demon Mama does this, she's not trying to harm children. She's not trying to traumatize them. Her overall point is to help children. She's just going about it the wrong way. I felt like I was like very charitable to her to like make an argument in that case to say she's not actually trying to help pedophiles. This is not what she wants to do. It's just an accident. Like, it's not on purpose. Don't think that she's doing this because she's trans or because she's LGBTQ or anything like that. It's just confusion, and that's it. I felt like I was being very, very charitable to her in the way that I like steelmanned her arguments in a bunch of areas.
So now I'm going to explain why, from my perspective, it was less than charitable. For example, you bring out in your video, I think in the Vaush part, the Demon Mama accused Shu for being a pedophile herself. And she said so in a video. Why didn't you roll back the part where they say that? Literally roll it back and see where it said that it was that. I don't remember what exactly. It wasn't what I meant, or I said it was.
She was saying that she was trying to say that she was using Shoe on Head's rhetoric against her.
Yes. And then you move on to show her her script of the video.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, well, basically, she did not outright say it, therefore it's
I
another
looked
lie.
for any semblance of that. I looked for anything close to that. She did say something like that in the first video. Or sorry, not, like near the beginning of the first video, but not in anywhere near where she said the other things.
So if you do something else, instead of reading the script of the video, if you watch the video itself, I think it comes out very obviously that she is being fallacious at that moment. She's being
Oh, I agree.
facetious, maybe
I
is the
said
word.
that right after. I said right after. Demon Mama's point was to say that that if Shoe on Head thinks this is pedophilic, then Shoe on Head would be pedophilic as well. She was trying to point out Shoe on Head's hypocrisy. I said that right after.
Then why call it a lie?
She did lie. She did not say right before that that she was using Shoe on Head's rhetoric against her. That is a lie.
So a lie is when you say something with the intent of deceiving.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that's what took place, or do you think she just misremembered her own video, or that
I think if she I think if I say something and I forget that I say it, that's one thing. But if I completely make up something that I never said, I think that's completely different. I think that's harder. I think that's much harder to believe. Like, say, I say, well, 5 minutes ago, you said these words. And you're like, well, I don't remember saying that. That's one thing. But if you say, I told you 10 minutes ago, Tom, that you're a pedophile. And I'm like, wait, did you? I think you would remember that. I think you would remember if you actually said something, not it, but she says it so confidently, it ends up not getting edited out of her video. And then also it ended up getting repeated 100 times afterwards by a ton of other people over and over, even by Vaush, that she got clip chimped right there. Like it kept getting repeated by people that that's what's happened, that is what happened. And while she's criticizing Shu for not going back and correcting things, she knows everybody is taken off with this narrative that that Shu on Head clipped her out of context just to make her look bad. She could have gone back and checked herself at any point, but she didn't. I would say, yeah, at that point, it seems like she knows she didn't say it, and she's okay with the fact that everybody's running around pretending she said it.
I see. And I don't think, well, it was the end of the video, so I don't take that much issue with framing it this way, but what I'm trying to present is that maybe to, in your own internal speak, maybe to your own audience, it came as if when you address the portions of the criticism that you agree with, to people like me who came from the outside and are only seeing your video for the first time and interacting with your content for the first time, the way you emphasize things and the things you choose to put your time on in this video, it seems like you were trying more to dunk on those people rather than leaving serious criticism, especially when taken together with things like in the Zan portion of the video, where you criticize him for things which are unrelated. For example, you say things like, you like apologize in advance for his big pauses, Zan, which I've mentioned specifically in my criticism, and I did take it as some form of muddying the water. And when you say that he built his entire career of future signaling, when you call him outright stupid and dumb.
I will admit I
those
was much more
things-
charitable to others than I was to Xanderhal. And that's why, like I even mentioned at a point, that I know everybody here except for Xanderhal. Like, I have relationships with all of them. They've all been on my show numerous times. They were all. Vaush is the only one that's still in my Discord. Demon Mama left. I think Denim's left. The like if you go to Denim's chat, Demon Mama's chat, I've got like my own color for my name. If you go in like her YouTube chat, I'm a joined member. I pay as like a paid subscriber to her chat. Like, I know these people, they know me. I was much more charitable to the people that I know than I was to Xanderhal. I don't know if I did that on purpose or not. But I agree that I was probably a lot more charitable to them, and I was I had a lot more fun with the Xanderhal portion, and said a lot more things about him than I did about the other people. I will agree with that part, yeah.
So if you agree with that part, can you maybe see how from an like a perspective of someone who follows those people, how this video came out in bad taste or bad faith even in some parts?
My hope was that I laid out my points and proved any like claim, or like substantiated any claim to the point that none of that other stuff could possibly even matter. I wanted it to be entertaining for anybody who watched, so I threw in a lot more jokes and I threw in a lot more memes and tried to play a lot of it up, so that, because it is a long video, so I wanted to make sure that I like kept people's attention and, you know, got their dopamine flowing every once in a while. It's not as though I don't believe the things that I said about Xanderhal, because I do. I don't think any of it was bad faith. I believe every little bit of what I said about him. The part about him, like his entire career being a virtue signal, is more just like foreshadowing more than anything else, because then I play the seal clapping over and over. Every time he's like over exaggerating the virtue signals. And then also, I did, even with people who I asked to watch the video beforehand, they all kept saying, you need to cut out all of the long pauses from Xanderhal, because like it's already a long video and you need to like save time, so cut out all of the long pauses. And I was like, wait, but I think like the long pauses add to like how pompous he's being while he's saying these things about his own friend. Like, while he's talking about somebody that he's actually been friends with for a long time, he is being overly like pompous and exaggerating things so that he can get all of the like clout and the virtue signals out. And so I went ahead and just added in before that like an explanation for why I was keeping all of those long pauses and everything in, so that people actually saw like his attitude and his demeanor towards the way that he was doing this. And I thought that that just made him look worse more than myself.
So I think I made a specific criticism about that. Let me look for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we like played one clip and then went way off. So if there's anything you want me to cut to, I'm happy to go to that instead.
I'm happy with the flow of the conversation. I think it's much more fun than, meticulously going point by point over your video, because that could
I
be
think we're
tiring very
covering most
fast.
of this. Yeah, I think we're covering a lot of it at the same time. So
Yep. Okay, I didn't flesh it out properly. I only mentioned that it's like muddying the water, at least the way I perceived it. Um,
and I want to mention this as well. I did purposefully add in a lot of stuff about people being stupid before I talked about them, so that when I got to the part where Demon Mama keeps accusing them of muddying the water, or sorry, not muddying the water, poisoning the well. Sorry, I kept mentioning those things because Demon Mama kept saying poisoning the well when none of the stuff was actually poisoning the well. So I was wanting to harken back to everything I said before I talked about anybody like Merrick or Denims or any of these people. I called all of them dumb. I said they're all stupid, and I was like, that's poisoning the well. I poisoned the well before I talked about all of these people. And Demon Mama also poisoned the well before she talked about any of these people. And so, like, we're all doing it. This is what we all do. It's normal. And I felt like Xanderhal and Denims, Vaush, like, actually, I don't think Vaush did it, but I think everybody else definitely poisoned the well as they did those things. And my point was to say, yeah, I did it. So did all of you. We're all doing the normal thing that we do where we try to describe somebody or give our opinions of them before we start talking about them so you understand where we're coming from. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. I see the way you approach this a bit better, but you have to understand how this comes off for someone who doesn't share your thought process.
Mm. I do. And that's why, like, yeah, I understood that, like, people who watched it hear me say somebody, talk about somebody that they like, and I call them dumb, and I say they're stupid, and I say they're bad faith, and all of that other stuff. My hope was that I would substantiate my points enough to where that just wouldn't matter. That was like the idea behind it, is that I could just be, incredibly rude and pompous, but while Xanderhal and Demon Mama are also being incredibly rude and pompous, I'm actually like sourcing my points. I'm actually pulling up articles. I'm showing, I'm going back to the tweets. I'm not just saying, well, they're a bad source, so don't believe them. I'm actually breaking down every little thing that they say and engaging with it and steel manning it and like doing everything I can to make sure that I actually cover all of my bases uh, on the actual criticisms. So yeah, I understand how I can probably turn somebody's brain off beforehand to where they're probably not even willing to hear me out afterwards.
And you don't care about that?
It's not that I don't care. It's that I tried to balance um I tried to balance, the entertainment value with the criticisms, and I I don't know if there was like I can't think of like a better way of going about it, because I am a rhetoric coach. I'm like a rhetorician in real life. I I could have just laid out the logic um and been like ultra nice to them throughout the entire thing, and absolutely nobody would have watched it because it just would have been super boring and like, like methodical in a way. And yeah, I don't think anybody would have watched it at that point. So I think I had to like add in a lot more entertainment value and kind of be a little bit spicier. I've gotten tons of comments, tons of DMs. I know Chud Logic has as well, from people who were fans of them, and like they felt like not only did the video make them think of them differently, but also them refusing to respond to it afterwards or even engage with the critiques afterwards made them think differently about them. And so I do know that it got through to a lot of people, and I think it did what it was that I was hoping for. But I understand that there's like, I'm not going to be able to please everybody.
It's not about pleasing everybody. It's more about how to say this. The main thing I took from the video is that you mainly ignored bulk parts of their criticism while overemphasizing the part which you see as disingenuous. So I know you were trying to make a case, and that's why you spent most of the time on it. I'm not blaming you for being disingenuous necessarily, but I think that the outcome of how you put up things could mislead people to believe that their entire criticism of Zan, of Demon Mama, was that the pictures were not sus, and that's where it ended. And it wasn't even initiated by some of Shu's responses. And that's like, to me, important context which you seem to leave out for
Yeah,
the
I
most
haven't
part.
seen it. And you're the first person to mention it too. I've had a number of debates with people about this topic, and you're the very first person to say that they actually thought that they were sus or that they had any issue with the pictures whatsoever. So I'm happy to look at it. I just, yeah, I haven't seen that. And I did go through their entire videos. So I went through uh, for Xanderhal and Demon Mama, they both did an initial video just about the tweet, and then they did their second video just about the video. And I addressed both of those videos in my video, and I went through their entire videos beforehand. And I didn't see that part. I wasn't like 100% paying attention the entire time, so I may have missed it, but um, I did not see or hear any of that, and I would be surprised to find out that they said it.
So I would offer you to go and rewatch the video and look for the part where they address one of Shu's tweets, the initial response videos. One of Shu's tweets where, again, she does this weird suggestion, which I still disagree with you about, that somehow the left attacking her, they're doing it as like they're attacking her over pedophilia shit.
Well, okay. If so, in my video, I made it a point to like it be one of the first things that I said. I think it's within the first 4 minutes. I stop and say, I don't believe this is a Pizzagate conspiracy theory. I don't think they're like locking kids up in basements or anything. Stuff like that, right? And Shuan had said it in the first quarter of her video as well. Whereas I would imagine, like, if I was Demon Mama or Xanderhal, I would imagine that would be like one of the first things that they would say if, in the same sort of thought process is like, I got to go ahead and get this caveat out there so everybody understands that I'm being good faith, um, that I'm not like here just to like disagree with Shuan Head across the board, something like that. That's what I did at the beginning of my video. I would expect that from them as well, but I know that they didn't do it in the beginnings of their videos. Those are the parts that I was paying most attention to see like where their videos were going to go and like the directions of them, because all of us as like content creators, we start off by like giving our main thesis at the beginning, and then we start to prove that afterwards and lay out all of our evidence and like blah blah blah. I would think that that would be like the first caveat given at the beginning of their videos, and I know that they were not made at the beginning of their videos. I know that it wasn't there. It may have been buried later on, but I would be surprised if it was buried later on. But I'm wondering, do you not think that that should have been one of the first things that they should say as a caveat, like right up front? Is like, yeah, this stuff's kind of weird.
So you say if they would have said, yeah, this is weird, but here's our other criticism of Shu, you'd be fine with it, and that video wouldn't exist in the first place?
No, 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 no. Even if they had said that those things were weird, I think that their like claims about her being like believing in Jewish cabals and her believing in QAnon and stuff like that would still be false and insanely bad faith. But I I'm saying you're saying that like I look like I'm being bad faith and like I look like I'm being uncharitable to them and stuff like that, where at the beginning of my video I stop to like talk about the parts that I agree with them on, about like how she should have pushed back more, how how I don't believe that there's a Jewish conspiracy theory, all of that stuff. Shuan had also at the beginning of her video says like I don't believe in the conspiracy theories, so she made that point as well. Vaush at the beginning of his video says, hey guys, just to be clear, I do think this stuff is weird. I do think the bear is sus. I think that the document is an even bigger deal. Like, I think that this stuff is weird. He made that clear at the beginning of his video. I know that Xanderhal and Demon Mama didn't. I know that the parts that I wasn't paying as much attention at were just the later parts way after, like more than halfway through the video. Those are the only ways that like I would have missed it, is if it was like after the first half of the video. Wouldn't you expect them to say that at like up front in the beginning to like make it clear? Like, I do think this is weird. I don't think that they should have, like, Demon Mama literally says that it was a fake apology, that they aren't actually sorry for anything because they didn't do anything wrong. So I have trouble believing that at any point she said that they were weird or sus. She says that
Again,
it's not BDSM on the bear, that it's not a pedo doc. Like, all of the problems with these things, she says that those problems don't exist. And Xanderhal did too. So I have trouble believing that at any point they would say that these things are weird or sus.
so again, I didn't really want to bring this up because I don't think it's a really strong point. I only mentioned Demon Mama saying again, maybe once or twice during the video, where the pictures are weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I can send you a timestamp later if you want for that.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I didn't. The reason I brought it up was to point out that you take what Shu said in her video, where she framed her own opinion.
Yeah, it would have changed the context of some of my video. Yes, it would have. Because where I say like they're upset with her for just pointing it out in the first place, yeah, that would be different for sure. Because I think that they are just mad at her for tweeting about it whatsoever. Whereas if they would say, well, yeah, I think it was weird. I think it makes sense that Shuanhead was upset about this in the first place. Then yeah, that would have changed so much of my video for sure.
So I want to take this for how you started this question, because you asked me if they should have said I didn't really understand if you wanted them to say that they don't think Shuonhead's position is the QAnon position, or did you want them to say that the bear things was a bit sus?
Yeah,
Which
that it
did
was sus.
you-
Yeah. I'm asking, do
Okay.
you think that they probably should have done that like up front?
In my opinion, I think it would have led more credibility for the criticism, because that led to the fallout. That leads to disregarding bulk part of the criticism, because people focus on that instead of other portions of the criticism,
Mm-hmm.
which you, by the way, are still not accepting as valid, which is something that both Demon Mama, Xanderhal, and even Vaush said, which is Shu framed this entire situation in a manner which made it sound like that the entire left is somehow protecting pedophilia by arguing.
I no, she says that she says in her video that like this is like a very like small portion of the left. It's a very small community. She says that in her video. I said that in mine as well. That this is like a very small group. This is not like a left wing position. Like, yeah, we both of us mentioned this in our videos.
So again, there's a problem with the emphasis. Saying it once in the video, 20 minutes video, where you keep conflating between people who criticize you and people who defend pedophilia,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like a lip service to me. It doesn't seem like someone who is trying to present a convincing case for that position.
Yeah, if you're just giving it as a caveat, yes, to say so. Like, if I wanted Shoe on Head to come out and say that she didn't believe in the conspiracies, right? I wanted her audience to know that she was not like on board with their crazy narratives. I wanted her audience to know that she was not supporting them on that insanity. I wanted her to pay lip service to it. That is exactly what I wanted from her. And so when she says that in her video, that was like major points from me. Okay, cool. This is what I wanted from you. This is what I expected. Thank you. She even at another point talks about how people like dive into conspiracy theories because because there are things in the world that they don't understand, and so they try to make sense of it by connecting dots that aren't really there. Like she twice did like I felt like paid lip service to people who wanted her to talk about the conspiracy theories and push back against them a good bit. I felt like yes, she was paying lip service to it, and that's what I wanted.
I use lip service as a bad term because it's like someone like
You're saying it's
someone
not the main point of the video, and I would agree that
um,
they're not like the main points of the video. They're just caveats.
yeah, and how much of that caveat do you think registers to an audience if she then goes to again push that narrative a few times during that video, more than once? Just how do you think this is received by her audience, which she is criticized for not taking responsibility over?
Um, I don't know, cause like I when she made the caveats, it was as she was like getting into the parts about her people can uh accusing her of like being a conspiracy theorist and like accusing her of like pushing the conspiracy theory. So in that section, yeah, I would expect her to just make the caveat and then go over that section so that like we all start off with the understanding. We all have the context beforehand that like that's not what she's saying. And then we can hear what it is she's actually saying afterwards because we already have that caveat ahead of time. So like lots of times I can talk about like um high crime rates in black neighborhoods, right? I'm just going to start off at the beginning and be like, listen, I believe in systemic racism. I believe that a lot of this is caused by the systems that we live in, and I think that that's like something that we need to do something about. And I don't believe black people are committing crimes because there's just something inherent in them that makes them commit crimes. But and then I'm gonna go on to yeah, like talk about high crime rates. I'm going to talk about like, solutions to these things. I'm going to talk about all of this other stuff. And I'm going to have that ability to talk about the high crime rates without having to worry about people thinking I'm racist, because I made that small caveat in the beginning where I just let people know, if that's some narrative that you think I'm pushing or that you want me to push, it's not going to happen. That's not what I believe. And then I move on. And I would do the same thing with like, talking about Jewish people being in positions of power, or, talking about like LGBTQ stuff, like Kink at Pride. Like, I'm going to make that small caveat at the beginning so that everything afterwards already has that context for it. And I think that that's what Shoe on Head did.
So I disagree with this framing, and I would offer a counter way of framing it, the way which I took it. To me, it would be more like if I made a caveat that I don't think that black people are inferior in any way. But then I would go on to talk about the bell curve and post 13, 15 over and over again. And like, even when that I made that caveat in the first place, the actions I committed afterwards conveyed an entirely different thing.
I think it depends on what exactly it is that you're saying, though. So yeah, if all you say is I don't believe it that black people are inferior, true, I wouldn't take that very seriously. Just like if Nick Fuentes says, "Well, I'm not racist," and then goes on to like, yeah, do the 1350 stuff and crap like that. Yeah, I wouldn't believe that, because all he's saying is I'm not racist. But if I'm specific in saying I do believe in systemic racism, I don't believe that these crimes are inherent to black people, I'm more specific in what it is that I'm denouncing, instead of just saying I'm not a bad person, really. Like if I say I'm not racist, all I'm saying is I'm not a bad person. Or if I say, like, yeah, it's really like that is more just like lip service, really, than anything else. It's just a meaningless sentence just to get you out of trouble. Whereas what I did and what I think Shoe on Head did is actually like address the specific things that people are going to accuse you of if you don't say it. I think they like she specifically addressed that thing and then went on to address her criticisms.
So I feel like this should take us back to some previous point in the debate, which we don't think we've finished really talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that both Shu and you, for a less extent, still make the accusation. And if I try to phrase it in your way, that the way that I'll take it only to the place where you expressed it. If I take it, if we look at the way Xan and Demon Mama downplayed the Balenciaga photo shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and we can say that they are running apologia for pedophilic behavior, right?
I'm not saying that they're actually running interference for it. I'm saying that I don't blame people who would look at that and come away with that narrative. I think if somebody's overly defensive about something, I think most people will look at that and be like, there's something else going on there. I don't do that because I'm like overly analytical and rational in these ways, to where I would need evidence of something else going on before I would make that accusation. But I know most people don't do that. Most people see something like that and see somebody overly defensive about something and then say, huh, there might be something else going on here.
So in your video, in the Vaush part, you did make that statement, though. You did make the connection between sort of framing the situation and
that they're defending something pedophilic. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I did.
And
yes.
I want to take it back to the maybe definition of pedophilic, because I think this term is being used very loosely in a way which can be very misleading.
Okay.
So we were having that conversation about child being next to like a girl in a bikini at the beach. And what I didn't manage to glean, and this may be a problem on my part, but I didn't manage to understand what's the key difference between that and like, I don't know, a pride event where people are going out, in a promiscuous outfit.
So I would say like the utility of the scenario. I would say a girl in a bikini, normally like there is a utility in her having less clothes on in that scenario. I'm consistent on this as well as where I talk about like I normally we don't believe that like adults should be in private with children or like younger people a lot of times, but I've said numerous times that I think lots of times like trans people who are like a younger trans person who's going through who's transitioning and doesn't have anybody else around them that can guide them. Lots of times we'll end up in discords with older trans people who are able to like give them some mentorship and some leadership in that area. And I think lots of times the utility in that scenario is going to make us be a lot more lenient. Whereas if there's not utility in that scenario, if somebody is just walking into a preschool class with a bikini on, now it's weird. Now there's something like now this would be a little bit odd and a little bit more suspicious. I think yeah, the utility of a kid holding a bear with bondage gear, that it just doesn't exist. It's just weird and suspicious. Whereas a girl in a bikini at the beach, there's a lot of utility there that we can understand.
I I wonder if it's a point worth pushing for, but what exactly would be that utility?
At the beach,
Yes.
so normally lots of people go to the beach to get a tan, to get wet. Normally when you're getting wet, like you want to be able to dry off quickly. The less clothes you're wearing, the faster you can dry off. You want to get the sun rays, like that's like one of like the biggest points in going to the beach is like to get the sun rays. It's good for you, it's healthy. You want to get the tan as well. Like that if you have a lot of clothes on, you're covered up, you don't get any of that. So um yeah.
So in that case, you think that I'm trying to steal your position. So in that case, you think that because it's in a space where these things are not taken as sexual, therefore it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
So, like, we could make an argument for how a dildo could be used as a toy, right? And we could hand this child this big black dildo. But I think most of us would look at that and be like, yeah, I just don't think that's necessary in this case. I think we can just give them another toy. Like, I think that we can make arguments for what is necessary based on context, based on different situations, and we can kind of like start to rationalize like what is necessary or what is like what we could be accepting of, and start to change those things. So like somebody in the last debate that I had on this, a guy showed me a picture of Mr. Krabs wearing BDSM gear. But then when he zoomed out, all of the sudden it changed because he was in like a Mad Max Fury Road sort of situation. And it's like, oh, like actually this isn't, it doesn't look like BDSM gear anymore. Now it looks like, end of world, like, desert types of clothes. Just as if I show somebody in like a cat uniform or like a cat costume and somebody in an elephant costume, both walking, holding a little girl's hand, and it looks like they're going like trick or treating for Halloween. Like, yeah, no big deal. But then if we zoom out and there's a big sign up above that says furry convention, now all of a sudden we have more context that makes this a problem, right? So we can look at like the scenarios, we can look at the context, and we can look at like the utility of the scenarios and try to decide whether or not this is necessary, whether or not we're more lenient or less lenient based on whether or not these would be red flags. We would decide whether or not they're red flags based on the scenario.
Okay, so the girl with the bear in the bondage gear. Let's just say we agree this is a bondage gear because I think Demon Mama comes from a perspective of kink apologist. Like this, she takes this thing very close to her heart, like about how people misinterpret, misunderstand, or vilify even kink in general. But for the sake of the argument, we both agree that that's the case with the bear. The thing I am trying to glean from this conversation is why the definition of pedophilic and how it extends to this situation. Because, again, like I said, it seems like it's a very loosely defined term, and maybe it's used in a manner which suggests more than you explicitly intend to express with it.
I think it can be, yes. I think that, like, in my video, I tried to, like, take care and make sure that I explained, like, what, like, how I came to those conclusions. And, I, I, again, I only think that I needed to do that because I don't think Demon Mama's audiences or Xanderhal's audiences would understand. But I felt like most people who felt weird about it felt like it was pedophilic. Like the thing that, like, even when you explained what it was that you felt weird about, you were saying it's a kid in a sexual scenario. Like most people would say, oh, a kid in a sexual scenario, that's pedophilic. You're not willing to make that leap. And I feel like you're only not willing to make that leap because of rhetorical implication. You're afraid that it would say that these people are pedophiles or that they're in favor of pedophilia. And I try to, like, make the distinction. They're not in favor of pedophilia. They're just like, they just so happen to be defending something pedophilic. I don't think that they actually want pedophilia. I don't think they want kids to get groomed. I think that this is just like, just an oversight by them or irresponsibility.
So the reason I don't commit to this wording is because the word pedophilic, I still don't get what it defined as. You can say this is an example of pedophilic behavior, but still I think this word carries much connotation with it, which again can be misinterpreted in too many ways.
Right, that's what I was saying, is you don't like the rhetorical implications of the word pedophilic, but when you say it's a kid in a sexual situation, you are giving the definition of pedophilic, like it is something relating to pedophilia, and that would be the same thing.
So every time a kid is in the presence of sexual expression is pedophilic.
I would say, based on the intentions of it, it seems like, yeah, in the pictures, it, like, the things that they did were intentional. So, yeah, I would say yes. If my kid walks in on me naked, I wouldn't say, or walks in on me and my wife having sex, no, I wouldn't say that's pedophilic. That's like an accident. That's not something that was, like, purposefully done. But I would say based on intent, like, that would play a big part, and it seems like those pictures were done that way intentionally.
So if intent plays a big part of it, then how can you say the same thing about kink incidents at Pride, for example? Because you could argue that people are there in kink gear and just happen to be next to children. And that would remove the intent from the situation.
Yeah. The difference is that they're advertised as family friendly pride events. And so that's why like Vaush's criticism was the same as mine. Like there are family friendly pride events and then there are adult only pride events, and the kink stuff should just be saved for the adult only pride events. It's not that we're against like kink or anything like that. It's just the fact that you know kids are going to be there. You know you're going to be around kids and you do it anyways. So I think the intent is there, especially when it's blown up as such a big deal every year and you choose to go to the family friendly pride events anyways in kink. Like you know what it is you're doing. You're doing it on purpose for sure. You know it's going to be provocative. You know you're going to be on Fox News and all of these other things. Like yeah, I would say the intent is definitely there at that point.
I see. Okay. That is the case, then I can see I would use this term in this manner in your video. I still think, like you said, the implication of using this term is doing the work for the right-wing narrative a little bit. Like people like me, even I came and said you claim that the left was defending pedophile when you actually said they were defending pedophilic behavior. But again, that's how it came off. That's how my mind took it as, and I believe that there are other viewers of yours that took it this way. Am I wrong to assume that?
I haven't. I think you're the. So actually, no. Sorry. Yes, the smug bug actually. He didn't have an issue with that specifically. He had an issue with what I defined as pedophilia. So he didn't have an issue with like, with me saying this is pedophilic as far as like the broader implications. His issue was like I don't think you're consistent on what you would call pedophilic. And so that was most of his argument, was giving me different scenarios, trying to see if I would be consistent on what I would or wouldn't call pedophilic or what I would or wouldn't call grooming like behavior.
I think a case could be made for that. Like, do you yourself, or do you see Shu raging up about, I don't know, people like to bring this example, kids at Hooters, for example, where there is explicitly sexual baiting, you could say,
Yeah.
intended for adult audience. But it seems like people tend to talk more about the Balenciaga stuff and Kink at Pride and neglect this part of of reality.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's why I gave an example of like somebody doing the same exact thing as Balenciaga, but they put it in their wallet instead. Like this is still a little bit weird. It's still not great, but it's not nearly as big of a deal as a major brand doing it and making it like a normalized thing. That I think that is like a much bigger deal. But I agree that like those other things probably should be pushed back against as well. It's just yeah, they're not like on like a, this wasn't just like a national ad campaign. This was like a worldwide ad campaign that I think in France they have very, we like we went over this on my show. France has very different social norms from us, and I don't think it matters to them, and that's fine. Like I don't, I'm perfectly fine with like France having different norms. They're naked around children a lot more. They have very different standards for these things, and I'm completely understanding of that. But here we just don't. Like we are a bit more stringent on those sorts of things. It was only like 100 years ago that we were perfectly okay with child brides, and so we're still like doing our job at we're still doing what we can to stigmatize things that are going to put children in dangerous scenarios. So even things like, children and adults being in the same Discord together and like crap like that. Like the week before I came out with that video, I went and debated a bunch of maps on a panel, minor attracted persons, and there was a 16-year-old on that panel on the maps side. And we didn't find out until the end. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of scenarios where I feel like we're still trying to stigmatize certain types of things. We're still trying to do what we can to get away from these things and fix like cultural problems that we had in the past. And I think that this is just part of it where for all of us, when Balenciaga comes out and apologizes, we all said cool. And that was kind of the end of it for us because that's all we wanted was for them to just take it down and apologize.
You again did a thing where you take your own position and generalize it to the entire population when that's not what people were angry about.
Sorry, when I'm talking about most people, but I agree there were a lot of people who were like who were turning it into like a QAnon Pizzagate sort of thing. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to include them.
And I know you're not trying to include them, but I think that excluding them from this situation, like pretending that it wasn't spanning out of control on the side of the right-wing media, kinda plays down both what happened, the effect it had on the real world, and what criticism was levied against you.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's like in my video, I made a point to like go on for almost 10 minutes about like grooming and like, sexual events at like, burlesque and drag queens and all of these other things. And most of that was an explanation for right wingers. Most of that was to say, like, you guys don't understand these scenarios. You don't understand what it is you're talking about. That it has nothing to do with these people being trans, or it has nothing to do with them being drag, or it has nothing to, even the way that you use the word grooming is incorrect. You don't even know what that word means. Like, I took a lot of care to go over that because I am more stringent in how I shape my audience and what I want them to understand. Like, I when I have that criticism of Shu that she should have pushed back more, I have that criticism because I do that. Because I make sure that I push back against my audience and that I make them understand where I'm coming from. And so I do still agree that yes, like I don't think that she did a good job in that area and that she should have done more. But I feel like having this conversation within the context of my video, it's already clear that I don't include them, that I have issues with the way that they ran with that narrative, and that I have issues with the way that they think about these things. And I'm trying to like talk about it from the context of we've already watched my video and know that I have these positions.
I would argue that you didn't make it this much clear in your video as you're making it clear now, because you did play down the way the right wing reacted. You said a bunch of random people took it and did whatever with it. You said
That was to say that it wasn't Shuanhead's fault that they took it and ran with it, but that once they did, I felt like she should have pushed back. Not that I was downplaying that they ran with it, but that it wasn't specifically her fault that they ran with it.
so. Now you're adding context, which I think was lacking in your video, because
But I said those things in my video.
I'm gonna have to check you on that. I'm gonna have to rewatch the Zan part and tell you exactly where you said that and why I think it came off the way I think it came off. But
I mean, I could probably even like, let's see.
things against trans people and doesn't seem to believe in like gender and that sort of crap. But I do think the overall point is correct, that it is a good thing to push back against your audience if they are saying things that are wrong or incorrect. In the sphere that
so let's see. I thought I used that specific wording more than once. Yeah, I guess I was wrong. I thought I used that specific wording, but going into the denim section, I before I even like talked about denims, I talked about how she should have pushed back against her audience. I said I don't believe in the conspiracies. And then I think it was during, yeah, right here.
talk about how since Elon Musk took over Twitter, anti-LGBTQ posts have been growing. They list off people like Blair White, Tim Pool, and if you go and actually look at the posts that they're talking about LGBTQ, but drag rumor, but I don't think that's most of them, especially people like Tim Pool and Blair White. I don't think that's what they're doing. They can still be discussing people without you having to make up positions for them to take. And drag queens are not part of the LGBTQ. There are definitely tons of people who do drag who are part of the LGBTQ, but drag in and of itself, there isn't a D in LGBTQ because drag is not a sexuality. It's not necessarily a sexual thing. And for that, I will allow my buddy Hunter Avalone to explain. Drag does
So I felt like that part was part of it, to say that it's not necessarily a sexual thing when right-wingers do think it's necessarily a sexual thing.
Nudity or stripping.
So yeah, drag is not necessarily sexual. Drag.
Yeah, and I go on to talk about grooming here as well. It's a long section, but I don't know how much of it you want me to play, but I can keep letting it play if you want, where I talk about grooming, what is and isn't grooming, that something being a sign of grooming does not make that person a groomer. Then I also talk about the fact that right-wingers use the word groomer incorrectly, and that they say that grooming is like when trans people or LGBTQ people are around kids and they think they're being groomed into being trans or gay, when that's not generally what the word grooming is meant to, or is used to mean. It's meant to talk about people being groomed into sexual scenarios so that you can later have sex with them as an adult. And I push back against that part. I also, there was one more thing that I talked about in here.
Legislative and cultural change
right here
being placed on you can ruin your entire life. And this is a really good thing, and we've seen a lot of progress through this strategy. Trans rights and gay rights, we have made legislative and cultural changes at unprecedented rates. But then eventually we got to a point where the left...
So yeah, I'm trying to make it clear that like I'm on board with LGBTQ, I'm on board with trans rights, I'm on board with gay rights. Like these are good things, that this is spreading, that it's being destigmatized.
Argue if those things are an overreaction, but those things are good.
I think
if we want to
I think I moved from the initial question I had in mind, but I can't remember.
Sorry, maybe I'm off on a different topic. I thought that what you were saying was that I wasn't clear about the fact that I was like pushing back against right-wingers who might think that I'm on their side, and then I'm one of them, and then I'm calling these people pedophiles, and that they're LGBTQ and pedophiles, and that I would be like with them, like, yeah, we're getting the pedophiles because they're trans people and blah blah blah. And so I go off for a very long period to make sure that like anybody who watched my video knows that that is not my position. And then I even take a minute at the end of like in the middle of Demon Mama section to say that like she's not in favor of grooming. She's not in favor of pedophilia. She just so happens to be supporting things that would make it easier for that to happen, but it's through ignorance, not because she likes pedophiles or because she likes grooming. Like I said, all of that. So I thought that that's what I was addressing, was that I was like, even though I criticize, while I'm criticizing Shu for not giving enough pushback, that because you said I was much clearer here on that, and so I'm trying to show you I don't feel like I was only clear here. I felt like I made it very clear throughout my video that that this was my stance and that I was like on their side, and that I'm not with the right wingers. I'm not on their team when it comes to the crazy stuff about grooming and all of that.
So there are two positions here which I'd like to address. The first position is the one which I tried to make in the first place, which is that in this video, you give the impression that the people you criticize somehow run apologetics for pedophilic behavior. The second position is the one which you presented right now, which is included in your video, and that is the rejection of the right-wing narrative about grooming and LGBTQ. Those are two different positions. Which
you're saying the first one wasn't in the video?
Yes.
Okay, that's the one that I was saying is in the Demon Mama section, where I'm saying, okay.
Because my criticism is not exactly that you are.
Yeah, you're saying that I wasn't clear enough on it.
Yes.
Okay.
It could be taken in this manner, that it could embolden the right-wing way of framing this situation. And that's basically it.
Okay. It's right here, I believe.
Likely to be traumatized by nudity later on in life, and so therefore they believe it's okay to expose children to sexual things because they believe that they'll be less likely to be traumatized by sexual things. The problem is that, one, we don't live in a society where children are constantly exposed to sexual things, therefore it would be detrimental to them and cause trauma. Two, being exposed to nudity is not the same thing as being exposed to sexual imagery. And three, we've stigmatized having sexual things around children for a good reason, and the reason for that is to avoid children being abused. So if you do see children with sexual things or around sexual imagery, these should be red flags for everybody else around. These social norms are meant to protect children. So while we've already talked about the fact that pedo hunting is not helpful for stopping child molestation, the Balenciaga story is not about pedo hunting. There's not a pedophile here. There's no pedophiles around. People are upset that they are breaking the social norms of allowing children to hold sexual things, be around sexual things, to where if this was normalized.
Yeah.
So,
this is the part right here is where it says, so while I understand most people see something like these videos from Demon Mama and they think this is somebody who wants to normalize sexualizing children, what she actually wants to do is break down social norms and put into place new norms that won't be as harmful and harmful. The problem is that you can't break down. So yeah, that's the part where I say, like, she's not trying to sexualize children. She's trying to put in new norms to protect children. That's, yes.
I came to address something else in your the way you framed there, because it's again this sort of the lip service and the double talk which you are.
It's a balancing act.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like you can say on one hand that you don't believe that they are protecting pedophiles or they're running the fence for pedophilic behavior and stuff like that, but you also say the other thing. And
yeah, so I'm saying they're not trying to protect pedophiles. Like, they're not doing that on purpose. Their intent is not to protect pedophiles. And that's what when you said that earlier, that's what you made it sound like, was like I was saying that they wanted to protect pedophiles, when in reality I don't think that's what they want. I think that they're doing that like as an accident, or just like by extension. And that was my argument earlier, is that yeah, they are doing things that would in the end make it easier to groom children, which would help pedophiles, but I don't think they're doing this like intentionally. I don't think that that's what they wanted to do.
So again, I don't think you approach this with bad faith or with even bad understanding of the situation. I do think that you overly committed to the framing as if those people are downplaying the Balenciaga stuff and therefore are defending pedophilic behavior, and didn't do enough to negate that notion, which I think is an important thing to do, especially if you perceive your audience, and you said yourself that you challenge right-wing thought in this video. At least it's intended to right-wing audience. I think you didn't do enough to negate this notion.
So
Okay, does this make sense?
It makes sense. So I think 6 different times I say that Shu should have pushed back against her audience more. And I think throughout the video, I make it clear on what it is that I think she should have pushed back against. So I disagree with where you're saying it's not as clear, because I think everything that I just now showed you is me making it clear over time that that I don't think that they are personally pedophiles, that they're not personally trying to protect pedophiles, that they are just by extension doing things that would happen to help pedophiles. But I'm clear in the fact that I think they just misunderstand the social norms and why other people are upset about it. And that's what this entire section that I'm on right now is about, is me explaining that they just misunderstand the social norms. And then I try to steelman her argument for allowing children around nudity to desensitize them to nudity, because there's a lot of studies that show that desensitizing children to nudity means that them being flashed or something like that, that they would be less likely to cause trauma from that nudity. And I like go on to explain like why I disagree with that, but I'm steelmanning their argument and then arguing against their steelmanned argument to show that their intention is to protect children. And that's why this right here that I just showed you is where I'm literally saying her intent is still to protect children. Like right here where it says Demon Mama, let's see, and they think this is somebody who wants to normalize sexualizing children, which what she actually wants to do is break down social norms and put into place new norms that won't be as harmful. So this is me like explaining right there that her intent is to help children, to make it to where children won't be harmed, that they won't be hurt by pedophilia, that they won't have trauma from these things, not to help pedophiles. Like I feel like I'm going above and beyond to steelman an argument that is never actually made clear in her video.
So then why do you go later in that same video of yours, and I don't remember the exact wording, but in the Vaush part you do make that suggestion again, that it's
they are defending things that are pedophilic.
Yes.
Because he says there is nobody out there normalizing pedophilia. Nobody is doing this. And he says that numerous times. No one's doing this. Shu's just arguing against, a straw man, or she's arguing against nobody. And so I'm pointing out, no, she's not arguing against nobody. She's arguing against Demon Mama. Demon Mama is doing this. It's not her intent to do this, but that is by extension what she is doing, is normalizing things that would be harmful to children.
So that's where I will point back to the timeline, because I think Demon Mama was much more explicit about this position in a follow-up video to the video Shu made. She didn't spend so much time on it on her initial response video, which I would stress out again, had a very large portion of it dedicated to fleshing out the right wing, going crazy with that narrative that was initiated by Shu's tweet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think saying that you keep mixing between those 2 points in the timeline, because it makes it sound like initially Demon Mama went overtly above and beyond protecting the Balenciaga thing, when she did so for like 10-15 minutes in a 2-hour video, and that could also be considered form of disregarding the majority of her criticism by pretending that both the initial video and the video responding to Shu's video are somehow coexisting in the same moment.
Well, it's because her response to Shoe on Head was to say that there was nothing wrong with these things. And I'm saying, if you are saying there's nothing wrong with these things, that those would be like help grooming children.
But that's like stripping everything she said in that initial response video.
It's not just stripping it. It would be a counter argument to it. It would be her disagreeing with herself or changing her own position. That's why I said, when you said that, like, if I had that, that would have changed parts of my video, but it wouldn't have changed, like, the video still would have been made, because it would still have everything she said in that second video. Like, if she doesn't believe that what's on the bear is BDSM, what problem could she possibly have with that picture? What could possibly be the issue there? If she doesn't believe those are alcohol glasses, and she doesn't believe what the bear is wearing is BDSM, there is absolutely no issue for her to have with the video or with the pictures. But you're saying she does have an issue with the pictures, but all of the issues, she doesn't believe in those.
I think she's more downplaying it rather than ignoring it, because of the way people reacted to it in such a vast and can say overblowing it beyond what it was. It's something that I'm less comfortable with assigning to Demon Mama. I'm more comfortable with assigning this to Xanderhal and Vaush, because Demon Mama did make a big deal out of it, which I again think it's because she's also running the fence for Kink in general, the same breath.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I mean, with Vaush, I didn't criticize him for any of those things. My issue with Vaush was that he was saying nobody's saying these things, but I just showed that, like, Xanderhal and Demon Mama are the ones saying those things. Xanderhal more so played down the entire thing, and he never explicitly said there's nothing wrong with this. But I felt like that was communicated in his downplay of it, and then saying that, like, acting like Shuan Head never should have put out the initial tweet whatsoever. And then saying that her initial tweet was a conspiracy theory. I felt like, yeah, that in and of itself is him kind of saying, if this is just a conspiracy theory, there's nothing more to it, then I felt like, yeah, he's saying that there's nothing wrong with the actual pictures at all. But you are right, like, he doesn't explicitly say, there's nothing wrong with this stuff. My main criticisms with him was the conspiracy theory stuff. With Demon Mama, it was more so her actually saying like that, yeah, there was nothing wrong with the stuff.
So again, I disagree that the majority of your criticism towards Zan was somehow pinpointed to that very position which you just presented. I think because you try and, like you said, being a bit more playing with the Zan part, being more entertaining rather than accurate, I think it comes out just as you
I don't think I
dunking on
was
him.
inaccurate, but I can understand why you would say it comes off as me dunking on him. I can understand that, but I don't think it was inaccurate at any point. Like, there are parts where, like, so, like, where he says, like, what was it? You know, he's going over the tweets and he's like, look at this right winger. Like, right wingers are what did he say? He's like, they're so he said they believe that being like mean is a virtue. And then I go back to the beginning of his video showing him like being mean and acting like it was a virtue and like saying like, oh, I'm a giga chad, it was dope, I'm glad I did it, like blah blah blah. Like, he is saying being mean is a virtue. I'm showing the hypocrisy in his thought processes, and then I go over points where he's being where he is using conspiracy theory like logic and just saying, well, don't you think that's what they're doing? Yeah, exactly. And then just moves on. And I'm laying out like a line of, like a pattern where over and over, he's not willing to show you the evidence of the claims that he's making. He's not willing to pull up the stuff. Like, he's not willing to substantiate his points. He's just going to keep making claims. And then I get into him over and over accusing her of, like, or same with him, like calling her a Nazi, like not outright, but pretty much calling her a Nazi. If you say she has Nazi beliefs and agrees with Nazi worldviews, that is what a Nazi is. It's like somebody who agrees with Nazi beliefs and Nazi worldviews. So, the I'm like laying out like a pattern of behavior of him over and over being bad faith, accusing her of insane things, and then not willing to substantiate any of his claims. And then I show him over and over and over and over and over, call her a conspiracy theorist, say she believes in Jewish cabals, say she believes in QAnon, and still not willing to substantiate any of those points. So I don't think anything I did was inaccurate. It all played towards the point, the overall point that I was trying to make, is that he's just very irresponsible with the messages that he's putting out.
So I would like to push against that, but before that, I would like to address something you said at the beginning of this, and that's the fact that you criticized Zan for saying that for the right-wingers, being mean is a virtue, which is not what he said, and it's not what you said in the video.
Yeah, it's not exactly, it's something else, yeah.
He said for them cruelty is a virtue.
Right.
And I addressed that in my written criticism for your video, and by saying that it's not the being mean part which is the problem. It's the vilification of someone's very being as to be rumor adjacent in some form, while knowing this is not true. That's the cruelty part. That's the bad part.
Well, but he says cruelty. He says it twice. He says, remember I told you guys earlier that these guys think cruelty is a virtue? Well, here it is. These guys think cruelty is a virtue. And then he reads the freaking tweet, and like, he says it twice, I believe, in the clip, that cruelty is a virtue. He's not just talking about vilification. And then I go on to even if that was the point, I start to make the point that, like, he used to be far right. He used to be in these areas. He used to understand these sorts of beliefs and understand how people fall into these beliefs. I believe in stigmatizing the beliefs, not the people themselves. But I do think that he, by like going and telling specific people to kill themselves and things like that, he is vilifying the people, um, and and so I would still say that like my criticism would still land in that scenario. Like he's telling the person to kill themselves.
And I agree that is very mean, but I don't think it's the same way as telling an entire community that they are groomers and pedophiles, or that they somehow want to mutilate children.
I agree, it's not the same.
Okay, so that would be.
If I agreed that that was his overall point, then I suppose, like to an extent, you would have a point. But to me, that just didn't seem to be his point. He said cruelty is a virtue, and he even said that he was hearkening back to things that he explained earlier about cruelty being a virtue. And I went and checked it, and he was just talking about how like they all pat each other on the backs every time they're mean to people, and every time they're and he would talk about them being mean to trans people, but it was the cruelty part that he was focusing on, is that they all enjoy and praise one another for being cruel. It wasn't just like a vilification.
I see.
But that might be what his overall point was. I just don't feel like if that is what he was saying, that was not communicated to me at all.
It's less about what you understood from it and more like how it was presented in your video. Because I would argue that Zan made a very intentional use of the word cruel, and you took it to being mean. That's how it came out to me.
Cruelty is like a synonym for being mean. Like it's like I think cruel is like behavior that actually like causes the other person to feel bad, or like causes some sort of trauma for them, or like something like that. And I would think, yeah, like telling people to kill themselves is like as bad as it gets.
Okay. I don't think you do this in intention or bad faith, but I still think it comes to show that the scope of criticism, while I disagree with the framing even of this specific instance,
Mm-hmm.
The scope of your criticism is beyond just, the very informed position that those people were. I'm trying to steal my date again. Those people, as a consequence of their action, ran the fence for pedophilic behavior. I think you spread it out a bit and made it something more than just that criticism. I can only point out to the Zan part and to the Vaush part, maybe. I still didn't really dissect the Demon Mama part.
Yeah, that wasn't my main criticism in the video. Like that's not like the thing that I was most concerned about.
So I can say the same thing about like Zan's video or Demon Mama video. Like I could also say that wasn't their main point. There was so much more going on there.
Sure, but if people clipped me and said this specific thing that you're saying here is false in and of itself, like I did with them, or if they said, "Hey, you specifically are saying something here that you that shows that you're being hypocritical in this other clip," or like if they say the truth statement right here in and of itself is false and you are lying, that I would be perfectly fine with all of those things. I don't think that like the things that I'm clipping them for need other context when the statement in and of itself is false.
again, I truly believe that that's the way you see your own words playing out. I just, again, took it to be a little more than that. I, I've seen you making all sorts of statements about Zan, especially trying to um, um, make make a case that he's somehow, in general, not a very wise person, not a person worth listening to, a person with disregard to the truth, even.
Mhm.
And
And these are criticisms that I've always had of him, just to be
yes,
clear.
but I think you do it mainly by disregarding other portions of this criticism and overemphasizing the part which you disagree with in order to make this case, which I would argue is a disingenuous way of framing the thing. Understand my problem?
Um, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't. What was the disingenuous part? Is leaving out other parts?
The disingenuous part, um, if I'm trying to define it properly, would be the part where you kind of present this as this his entire criticism, lending very small time to addressing his actual criticism, and thinking that in a 2-hour video where most of it is dedicated to unrelated criticisms about him, that specifically that one time where you said you expressed his position, that would register in a better form than the rest of the things you claimed and presented in that video.
Okay. Yeah, because I like at the beginning of it, I do say like, his overall criticism is that Shoe on Head should be more responsible in the way that she puts these things out and should push back against her audience if they're taking a narrative with something that she didn't say. And if that's all he said, then I would be okay with this video. So I feel like I did like steelman his position at the beginning and say, this is his position. It's just all of the other things that he said that I have a problem with. And then I go over all of the other things that he said that I have a problem with. So I feel like I framed it in that way to say, like, this is his overall criticism. This is what he's saying. I even agree with this statement. This is why he's like, this is his stated position for burning the bridge with Shoe on Head and all of that. Like, I, I feel like I steelmanned him very fairly in that sense, and then just went over like point by point specific things that he says. Like, I think if I say at some point in the video, um, you know, all trans people are groomers, and then I move on, I don't think you need other context for that statement. I think you can just look at that statement in and of itself, clip it, and move on and go take it to another video and be like, look what Tom said. He said all trans people are groomers. I don't think I would come in and be like, well, you didn't hear that actually I have a trans sister and that I have friends that are trans and blah blah blah. Like, I don't think any of that would matter if I the statement in and of itself is a false statement. And yeah, I felt like that was like a lot of his statements, just the statements in and of themselves were false. Saying that she believed in Jewish cabals, saying that she was a conspiracy theorist or that she was pushing a conspiracy theory, saying that she believed in, that she had Nazi beliefs and that she agrees with their worldview. Like, all of these different things were like false statements in and of themselves. It would, like, there isn't other context that could be added that would change any of those statements.
And you don't think any of those things that Zan said were expressed as, I don't know, a hyperbole or a joke, or even in a mean manner to demean her, but like in an obviously overreaching context?
Possibly, but all of the things that I said that I was doing for entertainment value or that I was just adding in, I agree with all of those things. Like, I will stand by all of those statements. I believe I can substantiate all of those statements, or I like those are my actual opinions. I'm not just like being hyperbolic, and then I'll, if you like quote me on it, I'll be like, oh, I don't really believe that. No, I'm gonna stand by all of those statements that I made and say, yes, I truly believe this. If he truly believes any of those things, then he's just wrong.
So how could we tell?
How can we tell if he believes any of those things?
How can we tell if my understanding of his behavior is correct, or if your framing of his behavior is correct?
Well, so let's say, do you think he's trying to say that Shuan Head believes in Jewish conspiracy or in Jewish cabals? Do you think he believes that?
No, I think it was a clear hyperbole.
Okay, so if we look at the 3 other clips of him accusing her of being a conspiracy theorist, having conspiracy brain, or pushing a conspiracy theory, do you think any of those 3 statements link up with her believing in Jewish cabals? That there's a pattern here now that we can see that would link up to him believing that she believes in Jewish cabals?
I think that would be a stretch, because I think it's very clear from the way he expresses that she is a Jewish conspirator or something, um, compared to the other statements that you mentioned. I think that it's you could argue that he does the same thing that you do, which I accuse you of doing, which is not to be clear enough with what he's saying. But I don't think that's the case, because I think, like you did, he was very playful with his language. So
But
I don't think
I don't
anyone
think I
is.
was playful with my language, though. Like, that's kind of what we've been going over, is like when you say, well, I'm not sure that you address this point, I'm showing you, like, here is where, like, I specifically address that point, and I specifically say, like, they aren't trying to help pedophiles, or they aren't trying to get children groomed. Like, I say these things specifically and go over them and, like, focus on them for long periods. Like, I I feel like that's the difference, is that, like, everything that I said, even if I say I'm doing it for entertainment value, I still stand by those statements, and I will hold those statements as true statements. Whereas you're saying, oh, well, this is a statement that he's making and we shouldn't even take it seriously at all. Like, if we asked him about it, he wouldn't even actually believe this. There is nothing I said in my video that I don't actually believe. I believe everything that I said.
So that would make your criticism criticism against hyperbole in general.
Not, no, I think that you can be hyperbolic, but hyperbolic is like stretching the truth. Whereas, like, believing in Jewish cabal conspiracy theories isn't just stretching the truth. That's just a lie.
I fail to see the distinction.
So stretching the truth is like, I say, I don't know, that I'm, you know, if
Because if I may, you did say that he assigned to Shu conspiratorial thinking, and like those things are something that I do think he believes, and I do think he makes the case for it in his videos. And then the Jewish conspiracy part would be the hyperbole, would be the stretching it, the making it so and like making it, exaggerating it so that it makes no sense anymore. That would be.
But it does make sense, though. And that's the thing, is that when you accuse somebody of being like believing in Nazi beliefs, and then later also say that they believe in Jewish cabal conspiracy theories and that they're a conspiracy theorist, all of these things link up, and it's all things that he repeated over and over and over and over and over. And like, we would just end up having to believe that even though these are all linked to one another as one idea of her being a Nazi conspiracy theorist who believes in Jewish cabals, instead we would have to believe that only one of those things is actually hyperbolic and the rest of them are serious statements. And or we would have to believe that all of them are hyperbolic in and of themselves. And that's I think that's I think that's a stretch. I think that's a tall order to believe.
Okay. So here I would point out the amount of charitability that you're willing to extend to Zan's behavior. That you are unwilling to extend towards Zan's behavior, which you do extend towards Shu's behavior. Because she committed the same thing by expressing once her real position and then moving along to repeatedly making the connection between people attacking her and people making pedophilia apologia.
You understand the difference, though, between making connections and outright saying it? In each one of my statements, he is outright making those statements. I'm connecting each statement that he is outright saying. Whereas you're saying, here's these links that we can put together to come to a different overall conclusion that she never actually said. Whereas I'm not saying this is a thing that he never actually said. I'm saying he actually said each one of these things.
Shu also outright said these things, but she didn't say it. Like, she didn't say leftists are pedophiles, lol. She did say
that's what I'm
people
saying.
are coming after her for people are coming after her for attacking pedophilia. If I remember correctly, I can send you to the exact point in a video where she said that. That's a very clear cut. Her expressed
I put
the
that in my
idea
video.
of 1035.
I put it in my video where she put out a tweet saying that Hunter Avallone, ContraPoints, and Xanderhal all blocked her on Twitter to defend pedophilia or something like that. So I did put that in my video, and I would agree with that.
But that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to her response video. In her response video, again, she said once, we can agree on that she says once what is her stated position.
Mm-hmm.
But again, she goes on again and again to conflate the criticism people are levying on her with defense of pedophilia. She does this at least 2 times explicitly, and I can make an argument for at least 3 more times where that is made implicitly.
Mm-hmm.
So why there are you willing to extend charitability to the point of where you can parse different part of her, what she's saying, and take only parts which agree with your understanding of her wording, and with Zan, you're much less forgiving on this regard.
It's going to be the same thing. What we're talking about with Shoe on Head is we're saying she said a bunch of different things, and so now we can come up with a new narrative that she didn't say. Whereas I'm saying, like, he actually said that she believes in Jewish cabal conspiracy theories. Like, he actually said those words. I'm not linking a bunch of different things to come to that conclusion. I'm saying there's a bunch of other things that can tell us that he believes this statement is true. Whereas you're saying it's not a statement that she said that I'm giving you evidence that is true. It's a statement that she never said that I'm giving you evidence she believes is true. There's a massive difference between the two. And I can understand how you would come to those conclusions, but it's not analogous to the Xanderhal scenario where he literally says she believes in Jewish cabal conspiracy theories.
So I would refer you to Shu's video on the matter. I think it's around 10 minutes 35. That's where I think, the way I understood it, she makes quite the explicit statement presenting everything as if she's being attacked.
Maligned over pedophilic things.
Yes.
But I agree with that scenario, but I don't think that has anything to do with the LGBTQ. Whereas you're connecting it to the LGBTQ unnecessarily.
No, that wasn't my criticism of what you just said. My criticism, what I'm pushing against is the notion that Shu didn't say explicitly the stuff which he says in the video. Just say the distinction between Shu's case and Zan's case is that Zan said things explicitly, and Shu's maybe lied by omission or something like that. That's not what I think happened. What I think happened is that Shu also said explicit stuff in a video, which you seem to forgive in a way which you don't seem to forgive Zan.
Okay, what was the timestamp? Because I'm not understanding. It's not that I forgive her, it's that I agree with her. So I'm maybe I'll have to listen to it to understand. You said it was 10:13?
10:35, I believe, maybe a couple of seconds before that.
I'll start at 10:30.
A gay nightclub, I can't talk about pedophilia? What? To shitpost the LGBT.
Her saying that she can't talk about pedophilia?
Yes. Because she said, if I remember, if you can turn it back a little bit more.
It says that because the Club Q shooting had just happened, they had just killed a bunch of gay people at a nightclub, that they were upset that she tweeted that out right after a massacre of gay people.
And that's why she can't talk about pedophilia.
Uh-huh.
Is that not like forwarding the narrative that yes, this is all true, this was a pedophilic event or something?
Yes, the Balenciaga thing was a pedophilic thing, yes.
But she said pedophilia, not pedophilic, right?
Right. Pedophilic is relating to pedophilia. Yes.
I would argue that you're doing this right now live. Like, you're taking her actual words and you are willing to interpret them in much more forgiving manner.
I'm not understanding what you think is different from what I'm saying. That's the part that I'm confused about. I don't understand what the criticism is here, because again, I agree with what she's saying. And she is saying pedophilia. Yes, when we're talking about the Balenciaga stuff, we are talking about like issues with pedophilia. That is what we are talking about. These are all related to pedophilia.
The exact wording of hers were that because the Club Q shooting happened, she can talk about pedophilia.
She cannot talk about pedophilia, yes.
She is saying she cannot talk about pedophilia, she's referring to the Balenciaga thing.
Correct.
Meaning, she's making the connection between Balenciaga and pedophilia.
Correct.
Which her audience ran with for the last month before the video was made.
I am also making the connection between the Balenciaga issue and pedophilia.
Which I disagree with as well.
Well, you say you disagree with it, but I again, like you've already admitted that it's more of like a rhetorical thing, because when you say it is about sexual things around kids, like you are admitting that this thing was pedophilic. Like when you say it makes you feel weird, like all of that, like I don't even feel like there's any point in arguing it anymore, because for me, and I feel like for anybody who listens to this, they will hear you saying, yes, this is pedophilic, but I don't want to use those words.
There's a reason I don't want to use these words, because I think words carry a lot of meaning and baggage with them.
I agree. And that's why I'm careful to make the correct caveats when I do use those words, because yes, they are like very serious words to use.
But when you say that Vaush agrees with you, for example, in the video, you said Vaush explicitly said that what needs to be done is for the whole world to do that, the rock meme,
Mm-hmm.
where they just look at it with a sassy face.
Yes.
And I don't think that's how it comes off when you do persistently defend the using of that word.
Yeah, but I argued against Vaush when he says that this isn't actually pedophilic, it's just sus. And I explain like what is it that you're sus of? It's pedophilia. And when I asked you the same exact line of questioning, you ended up coming to the same exact conclusion. So it like
No,
again, I understand you didn't say that outright, but the words that you are saying are the same thing. So you're not saying the word pedophilia, but the words that you say are the same thing. It is like it's all the same exact thing. And that's what I'm trying to tell you now is that anybody who listens to this will hear you say, yes, this is pedophilic, but I'm not going to call it pedophilic because I don't want to use those words because that would sound bad.
and while I understand that some people might perceive that as if that's what I'm saying, but I will insist that I can't assign it any more. I can't assign it the word pedophilic because it doesn't reach to that level. Because, like, if we take the word pedophilic just to mean something which is sexual next to a kid,
Well, relating to pedophilia is what we mean. But when you're saying it's weird because it's a kid around sexual things, you're saying it's weird because it's pedophilic. Like, it's not, because we went over the context as well. What would change this? Girls in bikini at beaches. Like, we went over all of that to say there are other scenarios that we wouldn't call pedophilic that just have something possibly slightly sexual, but those things are not present in this picture. So this picture would still qualify as pedophilic.
yes, I remember this part of the conversation. Okay, I think I still think you could have done better work. But,
I think I can agree with you on that part. There are things that I could have said to kind of like soften the blow a bit. And it was just like I understood those when I made it, and I just tried to like do my best to like find a even medium or like a middle ground somewhere where I was still going to make it as entertaining as possible and give as much context as possible while like moving through the video as quickly as possible for a 2 hour and 10-minute video. So I will agree with your criticism and say that like yes, I agree that that's true, and I wish that I could have done better in that area.
okay, allow me to leave a bit of good taste when I'm departing. I do think you express your points during this video very concisely. I disagree with the overall framing and mostly how this comes out. And I think, again, you could do better in the balancing act. But I do think overall you come to this in good faith. You're attempting to organize your thoughts and provide sources for your claims. And I come out from this conversation a bit more understanding of your position. But even though I still disagree with how you perceive the video to come out as.
Well, I appreciate it, and I really appreciated the time that you took to go through those. I promise you, I did go through all of your your timestamps and everything, so they didn't just go wasted. It just was really hard to respond to all of them, but I did go through all of them. I looked at all of them, and I appreciated the way that you approached this conversation. So yeah, I definitely didn't think you were bad faith or anything either. So yeah, I appreciate you coming and talking to me, because it's been really hard to get people to come talk to me about whatever their criticisms were. So I definitely appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it was nice. I enjoyed the conversation as well. Um, have a good one, I guess.
You too. Thanks, buddy. Okay, Tom. Okay. Yeah, that was a good conversation. I felt like he gave like good arguments at a lot of points, and there were like parts that where I understood like how he was connecting dots. I can understand how he possibly needed further explanation outside of the video for some of those things. So, yeah, I don't feel like he was being unfair at any points. The initially when I went over his comments, my main like criticism was that I just felt like he didn't understand the things that he was criticizing. Like each timestamp I felt like was kind of missing the point of what it was he was timestamping. And I stand by that, and I feel like that's what like I was trying to prove in this conversation, is that like a lot of what he was saying was just kind of like overlooking the context and the point of what it was that he was criticizing. But yeah, I think that we got to the bottom of all of that in the conversation, so that was good. So okay, so the thing with the shooting, right after a shooting, it is common for like right wingers to start pushing all of this other stuff in defense of a shooting. That is a thing that they do. I felt like it was unfair to do this with Shoe on Head, but I did not. But yeah, I understood why they were doing that. It's just I felt like it was poorly placed on Shoe on Head as well. But it is a thing that they do. It is a thing that happens, and it was like it's the same thing you were talking about yesterday. I mean, I think that it's like I think it's kind of malicious when they do this stuff. I think that they unfairly place that on her. It's kind of like when we talk about what conspiracy theorists do in the traps that they fall into, a lot of the people I feel like are falling into the same exact traps where they see the pattern and they see, oh, right wingers are doing X, Y, and Z. Now Shu did X, Y, and Z. She must be doing the same thing. And that I don't feel like that's fair. And I feel like I understand why they come to those conclusions. And I understand that like it's because of the pattern. But this is why lots of times I talk about like us as humans, we are like one of our superpowers is our ability to recognize patterns. It is a gift. It is something that no other, it was originally in the video actually, is a part where Denims says, people are coming to conspiracy theories because of their monkey brain. When they're seeing patterns that don't actually exist, and it's because of their monkey brain. And I was like, I don't think she realizes how insane she sounds here when it's not monkey brain, it's human brain. Only humans like can attach patterns at this rate. Only we can recognize patterns at such a high rate to the point where we can start to connect concepts to them. No monkey can do that. It's not monkey brain, it's human brain that does this. And not only is it our superpower, but it's also our downfall. It's one of like the things that we struggle with most, like all of the COVID-19 stuff and all of the conspiracy theories that surrounded that, and like people like, oh, there's a problem here, there's a problem here, there's a problem here, there's a problem here. Oh, this is a pattern where there's problems. Now COVID-19 is a problem. It's like, oh, dude, you just totally just like jumped 1,000 feet ahead of where you actually should be right now. But it is connecting patterns at such a high rate to where you start to see things that aren't necessarily true. And that's why I did in my video go above and beyond to give all of the caveats and say, I don't believe in this. I am on board with this. I don't like this. I'm not in favor of this. Like, and I kept doing that throughout the video to be overly cautious and overly careful, only for their audiences, because I know their audiences are the only people who would accuse me of those things when there's no evidence of it, but they would accuse me of it anyways, because there's other patterns in there that are going to make them think this is similar to what a right-winger would say. He must be in the far right and believe in like, QAnon and Pizzagate and that sort of stuff. So I had to like go way above and beyond to give all of those caveats to avoid all of this stuff. Tom, do you care about their intentions? I don't know. Who's they? Who's there? What are you talking about? My issue is the implication it gives when they say you're going to do this right after a gay shooting. This ties the problematic photo shoot with gay people, which wasn't the case. Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, is they are accusing Shu of doing it right after the shooting, because that is a thing that like right-wingers would do, or somebody who's like insensitive to the shooting. That is something that they would do if they're connecting it to like LGBTQ stuff. But that's like, again, them like overly connecting patterns to then believe that that's what Shu was doing in the first place. But that's why I believe Shu like should have done more to like to push back against that stuff. I did more to push back against that stuff because I felt like that's what we should do. So